What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons 365 days a year. I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison, too, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. The channel is growing at an unbelievable rate, and it is all thanks to you guys. So once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. But with that being said, let's jump right into today's video. So yesterday we discussed what Marcus Sasser's future kind of looks like for the Pistons going forward. And kind of the main topic of conversation was that Trajan Langdon has been vocal about wanting to get Jaden Ivey some of those backup point guard minutes. And obviously, we know the Pistons last year, when things weren't going well, they didn't really trust Marcus Sasser with the ball in his hands. They went out and got Dennis Schroeder. And I think another option, if the Pistons want to take a swing at a guy who's a lot cheaper than Dennis Schroeder was, and that would be Malcolm Brogden. I think that this move only were to happen if the Pistons were a little bit weary about having a backup point guard rotation of guys like Jaden Ivey, Caris LeVert, and Marcus Sasser. If they don't see that those three guys can really carry the load with the second unit, then there might be some room for Malcolm Brogden to come in and kind of offer some veteran presence. A guy who his scoring upside isn't great. I don't love his scoring whatsoever, but I do like his facilitating overall. I think that as he gets older, he kind of hones in on that, the ability to take care of the ball, makes good passes as well. He could be an option there. I don't love the fit whatsoever. He is very old, and he is on a decrease in production over the past couple of years. But if you want a very cheap option, a low risk, low reward, kind of like what I talked about with Trey Lyles yesterday, this could be a guy you get on the veteran minimum. You bring him in. He doesn't play the first couple months, but if you see, Jaden Ivey, we would much rather have him playing off ball every single time he's on the floor. We don't really want him with the ball in his hands. His decision-making ability isn't as, in tune as we thought it might be going into this year, then I think Malcolm Brogdon could be a guy you look at. Last year, he was in the 88th percentile in passing, in the 92nd percentile in creation, 81st percentile for creation turnover percentage. So he's going to come in, he's going to make the right reads, make the right passes, get the guys the ball that you want. And he's not going to take shots. He's not going to come in and try and really get going on the offensive end, besides really just letting the young guys kind of do their thing and just being a good creator overall. Obviously, I know it's very underwhelming, but when you look at it, it's kind of like a Corey Joseph signing a couple years ago, but you're not asking him to play 25 to 30 minutes a night like they were asking Corey Joseph to do during those 21, 22 seasons. So I like the fit overall with Malcolm Brogdon, and I just like the fact that he is a veteran guy. He's always showed that he's going to come in, he's going to give you 100% every night. He wants to win, and he wants to be a part of a winning culture. So he could be somebody you guys that you look at. But let me know your guys' thoughts on it if you'd be okay with just filling another roster spot with Brogdon, or if you'd like to see the Pistons kind of give Dennis Jenkins or Bobby Klintman some of those final roster spots as the Pistons round out their 15-man and continue filling spots with those young pieces. With that being said, unfortunately, in my opinion, I think the Pistons might be done adding this offseason, and I don't know if Malcolm Brogdon would be a guy that you go after, but I just wanted to go through all of the veteran minimum free agents that could be in play overall, just to kind of give you guys something to think about, something to talk about, and if the Pistons do try and make a move, those are some of the guys that they would be looking at, especially because they don't want to utilize that biannual exception. I think they probably want to wait to use that next year, or else there'd be some rumblings about different signings, like maybe an Al Horford or somebody else I've talked about earlier who might be asking for a little bit more than the veteran minimum. So I don't really think the Pistons will add throughout the rest of the season. And that brings me to my next topic, and that is the offseason over? And I've talked about, like I said, a lot of veteran minimum players, and they could be ads that, like I said, fill roster spots or just give you some more variety down the line if you are unsure about some different fits, like I said, with the Jaden Ivey at the backup point guard spot. Then it gives you some flexibility or whatnot if you were to go out and get somebody, some veteran leadership. Again, low risk, low reward. And I kind of wanted to talk, that's why I talked about Malcolm Brogdon is just somebody that, is very low risk, low reward, and is kind of one of the last free agents that's remaining. But that's the thing is, they could be free agents for a reason, Trey Lyles could be a free agent for a reason. Chris Boucher, Malcolm Brogdon, and that's why the Pistons really haven't shown any interest in them. And if you're going to if you're going to make more moves, they're going to be minor, and those are some of the options. But the Pistons might be kind of set, like I said, with bringing in Jenkins, allowing Bobby Klintman and Chaz Laner to kind of fill out those roster spots. Or you could see those guys become more G League fit players, and you see another signing with a veteran minimum. But I do think realistically, if we're going to look at overall just what Trajan Langdon has talked about, what he's said in his press conferences, and kind of how he's gone about this offseason, it would be a fair guess that the Pistons do not add anybody else this offseason. So we are going to have to look at some of those players, like I mentioned, who did play in Summer League, and we need roster spots. We need people to come in and fill roster spots, and that could be your cheap option. You go for the younger route instead of going for 30-year-old Chris Boucher, Trey Lyles, Malcolm Brogden, just some names I've mentioned, and you go with 23-year-old Bobby Klintman, 24-year-old Jenkins, and 23-year-old Chaz Laner. I think that is what the Pistons are more likely to do. They're very confident in their young core, and they've been very vocal about how confident they are in their young core, that they can get them to the next level, and that's why I think they're going to continue adding, continue growing through that way. But give me your thoughts on if you think the Pistons are done adding, or just give me your thoughts overall about who you would like to see being added, or if you'd like to see the Pistons go in the direction of just bringing up the G League players. And that's just kind of what I wanted to ask you guys for a favor here is I want to know what type of offseason content you guys would like to see. Now that the Pistons are most likely done adding, and I've kind of gone through all of the free agents that could be in play, I want some more ideas, some more stuff that you guys would be interested. Do you want me to do more predictions? Maybe talk about other things going around the NBA, not just the Pistons, trade targets at the deadline, etc. Just give me your guys' thoughts, any ideas or in-depth questions that I could answer for you as well, and I'll make sure to cover those in future episodes. But moving on, I wanted to touch on Jaylen Duran. I think, like I said, as the kind of offseason winds down and we start to get into more training camp talk and more season talk, I want to just dive into some of the Pistons' core and touch on just different parts of their game that I'm excited to see grow. And as the offseason passes, I'm getting more and more confident in the fact that Jaylen Duran is going to take a big leap from year to year. And here's a couple reasons why. One, I think that adding a guy like Duncan Robinson, who ran a perfect dribble handoff action with Bam Adebayo in Miami, he's been doing that for 8 years at a very high level, and I think that he can bring that to the Pistons and allow Jaylen Duran to really become an elite playmaker, an elite facilitator, because I know we saw last year, especially towards the tail end, he was really improving as a passer overall. I just wanted to talk about some of his numbers just as a creator. His portability on offense is in the 77th percentile, which for a center is really impressive. And that's basically just an attempt to estimate how well a player would fit with a selection of 4 random players. And so that's what you like to see out of a guy who, like I've talked about before, really can't space the floor, isn't a great shooter, but you trust him to be around different players and succeed when he's around, a whole mosh pit of different players, I should say. When you add Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert, players hasn't played with before, he still is able to succeed with them, and that's why I'm confident that he can become a very good complementary piece to Duncan Robinson, or vice versa. Duncan Robinson becomes a very complementary piece to Jaylen Duran. And his passer rating is in the 60th percentile at 4.8 last year, and that's just basically an estimate of the quality of a player's passing. So for a center, a very young center, only his 3rd year in the league last year, I think that's really impressive. Just staying above a league average and showing the ability to make the right reads at the right time. So I like that overall. I also like he increased his assist numbers from 2.4 to 2.7, and he also decreased his turnovers from 2.1 to 1.7 from 2024 to 2025. So I still think, obviously, there's a lot of improvement, but the upward trajectory is there. And like I said, the Pistons brought in somebody that I think will really complement JD, and that is Duncan Robinson. I mean, that dribble handoff that he ran with Bam Adebayo allowed for Bam Adebayo to get so many catches. If Duncan Robinson had the ball and he was continuing to pass it back and forth on those dribble handoffs, he would do it 3 or 4 times. the defense eventually both would double team Duncan Robinson, and either if he wasn't double teamed left open, he could take a shot, and if he wasn't, he could dump it down to Bam Adebayo, who then would now have 3 different options around him with only 3 defenders left, with a double team up top on Duncan Robinson. And it allowed him to face up at the basket, make decisions, and he was continually able to grow the past couple of years, and he's decreased his turnovers overall. Bam Adebayo, I should say, has decreased his turnovers, has become a better passer, and the decision making is exponentially better than it was in year 1, year 2, year 3 for Adebayo. So I think the comparison between those two, especially just their body types, is very fair, but it's just going to be a matter of if Jaylen Duran kind of develops that exterior game that Bam Adebayo has. And I do believe that Duncan Robinson is going to enhance that. So I think that adding a just more versatile offensive bag to Jaylen Duran's game is going to do wonders for this team and could potentially be another X factor like I talked about with Asar Thompson. Obviously, it's all hypothetical and we're banking on development overall, but Jaylen Duran has shown improvement, and the offensive side of the ball started to come a lot more naturally and easier to him last year as he got more comfortable with Cade Cunningham and some of the pieces around him. So I'm really excited for that dribble handoff action with Duncan Robinson. I think it's going to be very effective, and I really hope it allows JD to just expand his offensive game overall. But moving on, before we wrap things up, I just wanted to touch on a final Summer League recap. The Summer League is over. It's been a pretty interesting Summer League overall. There was some fun games from other teams that I watched. I mean, we saw some of the ups and downs from the lottery picks, and it's just fun to kind of see the progression throughout the week of some of these guys as they're really getting a taste of their first NBA action. So I liked what I saw overall from this Pistons team. I thought overall it was coached well. They had a good roster from top to bottom. Their bench pieces played well, and it was just a fun week. But when talking about the 4 guys that have a real chance to actually make the 15-man roster and be on two ways, obviously you've got Ron Holland, you've got Dennis Jenkins, you've got Chaz Laner and Bobby Klittman, Tolu Smith a little bit, but I do think that with the Pistons having 3 centers right now, Tolu Smith will start in the G League this year, and hopefully he dominates because he was incredible in the Summer League, and I think he's got a lot of talent. But when talking about Ron, obviously, he only played 3 games, and he's going to be a significant part of the Pistons rotation this year, so I don't really want to talk about him too much. We already know what we have in him. But Dennis Jenkins, I think he was incredible all week long. Against the Spurs yesterday, they played everyone pretty even minutes, and I think he only played like 12 minutes and didn't end up scoring. I think he had 0 points on like 0 for 4 shooting. But the 4 games prior, I thought Dennis looked very, very comfortable leading the offense, being that starting point guard, being the primary ball handler for, it seemed like, a majority of all 4 games, early games, and I think that Dennis Jenkins really showed that he's improved his game from year to year. Last year, he did average 7 assists in the G League, so he's continuing that. He's continuing that upward trajectory. He struggled efficiency-wise last year in the G League, but during the Summer League, we saw that efficiency tick up a decent amount. 3-point shot still got some work for sure. But I think a lot of what people were talking about was whether or not he was going to be able to compete for a rotational spot. Maybe he was going to take over from Marcus Sasser as a plug-and-play point guard that they play in situational minutes. And I don't think that that's going to be the case. My final evaluation on Dennis Jenkins is that I think if there's injuries or garbage time or whatnot, and he's on the roster, he will play. And I hope he gets some minutes, for the Pistons. But I do think that he will be running the backcourt for the Motor City Cruise, at least for the next year. He's still very young, 24 years old, and I don't mind that at all. Instead of, I'd mentioned a possibility where Malcolm Brogden becomes somebody you look at. And instead of doing that, you can allow for Marcus Sasser to continue to grow, and you can have Dennis Jenkins kind of developing himself for the Motor City Cruise and being an option going forward. And that's cheaper for you. It's a younger option than somebody like Malcolm Brogdon. So I think that's much more likely. I think that Chaz Laner. I think that Dennis Jenkins will do an excellent job like he did last year and like he did in the Summer League, really running that unit and just bringing the Motor City Cruise young pieces together, especially if you have Chaz Laner and Bobby Klittman and Tolu Smith and some of those other guys that are playing significant minutes. You want them to develop, and having a really good point guard is how you do that. But moving on, I think I just wanted to touch on Bobby Klintman very quickly. I talked about him a ton. I thought he played pretty poorly when looking at his entire game. There was about 15 minutes that he played where he looked like somebody that could potentially play in the NBA. But the rest of the, you know, 80 minutes he played throughout the week or whatnot, he wasn't great. There was a lot of times where he just struggled with decision-making skills. His passing looked clean, his rebounding looked clean, but just overall offensively as a scorer, as a shooter, it just wasn't great. There was a lot of times where he was just getting kind of manhandled by smaller defenders, and that's just really what you can't have in a guy who wants to kind of play that 3, that hybrid 4 at 6'9". You need him to be more physical, more physically imposing inside, and I don't think we really saw that. So I think that I'll keep tabs on him throughout this year, but he will be on the Motor City Cruise, I think, for a decent amount of the year, and we'll kind of see what that progression looks like going into next year, and hopefully he can be somebody that you look at with potential to crack the lineup, but I just don't think that's the case right now. And then last thing before we wrap things up, Chaz Laner. It was an up and down week for him. He knocked down some open threes, but he also missed a decent amount of open threes. We talked about it when we drafted him. He's a movement shooter, and what we saw movement shooting. We saw the high IQ. We saw the ability to find open spaces and be an excellent off-ball mover overall. And I just don't think we saw the knocking down shots at a high clip, getting hot, being able to just be a flamethrower and give you back-to-back-to-back threes. He did do that, however, on Saturday's game. He hit 3 straight threes, so that is definitely still in his game. I just think that being the first time he's played against NBA level players, in the summer league, a lot of pressure, first really time getting to showcase his stuff in front of the national stage. And he did okay. And there was some times where you could see the game was just too quick for him. But there was also times where he was getting up shots extremely quickly, moving and finding space. And I think that's really what we were looking at overall. I think it's just a matter of replicating what he did on Saturday and being able to be a very knockdown shooter when you need him. Be somebody like a Malik Beasley, a Tim Hardaway Jr., who just prides themselves as being a unbelievable shooter. And I think we saw that there's potential there and that there's a lot of room for growth as well. I think that he will be a guy who also plays significant minutes for the Motor City Cruise, maybe get some run here and there as a plug-and-play guy if the Pistons are struggling with floor spacing around Cade Cunningham. So we'll have to see, and if that, like I said, if that floor spacing does take a decline, maybe he finds himself getting some minutes here and there to kind of see what he has. But for right now, I do think that he is going to be in the G League and be running that show with guys like I mentioned, Dennis Jenkins, Bobby Klintman, and Tolu Smith, which again, I will keep tabs on. It's going to be a very fun season. They're going to be very competitive. So I'll continue to watch those games and keep you guys updated as we get closer to the season. But overall, very fun summer league, and I just think it showed us the gap between NBA role players and G League players. It's very, very significant. But, like we talked about with Dennis Jenkins, there's always some G League players that show that they can be NBA depth pieces in the future. They just need a little bit of time to refine their game. And I love what we saw from a lot of these guys, including Dennis Jenkins. And I'm excited to kind of see what they do in the G League this year. And also, if they do get run for the Pistons, I'll be very excited for that as well. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know in the comments or over on Twitter your thoughts on Malcolm Brogdon as a potential signing, or if you think the Pistons front office is done adding this offseason. Also, let me know if you think that JD will continue to make strides on the offensive end of the ball this upcoming season, and just what you're expecting from him this year overall. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter over at Kyle Garrison 2. Also, head over to Spotify, leave a review, leave a follow if you can. I would greatly appreciate it. And once again, thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 28 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all next time.